Hey, welcome back to No Hype Beer Reviews. Unless it's your first time, then welcome. Please consider subscribing. If you do, hit the notification bell, get all the updates. We're excited for today's video. The beer's courtesy of Phil. Thanks so much, Phil. I really appreciate it. It was filled as a homebrew. I don't know. It seemed like a better transition in my head than when I said it out loud. Anyway, it's a homebrew courtesy of Phil. It's Tuesday. On Tuesday, I try to test my palate. I'm not even doing this because it's a homebrew necessarily, but this is a style that I think I've only had one time. I know for a fact I've had it one time, but I don't think I've had it more than that one time. And it was Dogfish Head's version of a Sahti. So just because I did read this in the unboxing, but in case you didn't watch that or you're like me and forgot about it, let me reread what he wrote about this beer. So he gave me 3 homebrews and a couple other things, but I want to focus on the homebrews. So traditional Sahti is typically made in a kurna, which is a tree trunk carved out into a holding vessel, and then filtered through juniper branches to separate the liquid from the mash. I used juniper berries to try to emulate the juniper flavor addition. I also had pine shoots picked right from the trees in my backyard in the spring. I added those as well. Typically, a Sahti doesn't have hops, although some historical brewers use them. I added Motueka, which rounds the beer out with a bit of sweetness. Also, the style uses baker's yeast, but I use Quebec, which I might be mispronouncing. So it's not exact, but I did buy a Sahti malt mixture, so the grain bill is authentic. Definitely sounds authentic and cool, like authentic enough that tradition and all that stuff, which is cool, but then his own riff on it, which I appreciate. Kind of like that Dogfish Head one, So let's get into it. So he told me, they're bottle fermented. So he recommends not pouring the whole thing, like leaving some at the bottom, which is fine. Seems like this time, I didn't know what kind of glass to use. Seems like this time of year would be good to use, or good for juniper berries and pine needles. I already released a video on whatever day it was that had spruce tips. I have another one I'm going to do that has spruce tips that might come out before this one. I don't remember. But yeah, really excited. Actually, no, this was probably going to come out that Tuesday before Christmas. I think that last spruce tip one I might do on Christmas. So anyway, it seems like an appropriate time of year for that stuff in a beer. Anyway, I have no remembrance, so I have no basis of comparison. It has plenty of carbonation. I mean, get over a finger ahead. But it's like this coppery color, so I don't know what's traditional or not. That's not the point of this review because I don't have that knowledge to really make that comparison. I will say, it's plain carbonated, beautiful coppery color. The head is compact. It's white, a little bit of gray, very little bit of khaki. Also, it's fairly close to white though. Beautiful looking beer. It looks nice in the Ommegang glass. Let's see about the aroma. You can taste that beery fermentation for sure. It has a little bit of this earthy to me, I can't separate the adjuncts from this earthiness. So, and obviously that works really well with pine needles and juniper and stuff. I don't know, it's exactly what it's supposed to be. Now I'm even getting more of it. There is a sweetness to it. It's not caramel. More of just caramelized sugars. Think the top of a creme brulee or something. It's a little bit more like that. But that makes this beer sound like it smells sweeter than it is. God, this is awesome. The slightest bit of a Cheerio grain note. Lovely aroma, Phil. This is great. It's about the taste. Cheers. Thanks again, Phil. Obviously, I really appreciate it, but thank you again. Oh my God. Dude. This does take me back to that Dogfish Head beer, which I haven't had. When did they even release that Sahti? Did they do it more than once? I think so, maybe. It's been a long time, but it brings me back to that. It's so cool. The use of the juniper berries and the pine needles, definitely not an overpowering thing. Works really well with everything else going on. In some ways, it really follows the aroma, but it's not an exact conversion from aroma to taste, which is pretty cool. like I get that beeriness, that fermentation-ness of it all. So like it does drink like a beer for sure. It's got the adjuncts for sure, just like I got in the aroma. I'm glad I really, even though I said that creme brulee note, that I was like, but not super sweet, because the same thing is true in the taste. It's not overly sweet at all, but you do get that, not quite caramel, but some sort of caramelized sugar note. I do get some of the grains, kind of like that Cheerio thing, but I got more Cheerio specific in the aroma than I get in the taste. So that's cool. And that typically happens where like maybe you smell something that's more reminiscent of Cheerio, saltine crackers or whatever, but when you drink it, it doesn't really taste like those smells too much or at all. It almost has this like coating effect, which is cool. Like it's not syrupy. What was the ABV on this? 8.6. Hides the ABV pretty well. So it's not full on syrupy, but it does coat a little bit. So like there's some viscosity to it, but not too much, which is cool. I'm getting a little bit more of the pine juniper. Still definitely not overpowering. Works super well in the base liquid. Man, I could keep taking like big sips. Like this is just good. It's definitely flavorful, interesting, but also like just super drinkable. I think this would pair nicely with a lot of foods, and also where you're kind of like mindlessly just like, eating something, you take a sip, it's like, yeah, that works. You can be more thoughtful with your pairing, but also stands up on its own. Also, you could just like drink it while watching a movie or something somewhat mindlessly, and I think every once in a while the sip, it would kind of like draw your attention back to like, yeah, it's easy drinking, but also like there's some really cool stuff going on. My last note is going to make this, again, sound sweeter than it is. It reminds me of golden raisins a little bit, but again, not that sweetness, but there's just like this little fruit. It's also a relatively herbaceous, almost herbal tea kind of a beer at times, which I think is, besides the play on words, I think why Dogfish Head did the Sahti, T-E, I think they added tea to theirs. But like I almost get like, it's not full on chamomile or anything, but it's like the illusion of that, like I've said about baking spices and other beers. Phil, I love this, man. I think you did an awesome job of a style that's not super common. And, going off the one thing I have a basis for, the base beer, the essence of a Sahti, I believe, was met based on my limited experience with that, which is cool. But again, you did your own riff, which I really appreciate. So yeah, I'm going to say this is really stellar beer. Let's just see if this does anything. Get all of it in there. So it's cloudier. There's some of the particulates at the bottom, of course. But it looks like because a hair darker. It's not molasses. What is that? There is a newer. It smells exactly how it had. Something new. It's not quite molasses, but that's the closest my brain can go to something in the real world. Yeah, maybe in the taste, I'll figure it out. Yeah, it's not molasses. It's if you could take some aspects of molasses and mix it with like that earthiness I was talking about before. It's not quite nuttiness. That's interesting. That's just freaking good, dude. Oh, the slightest orange. So slight. With that herbal tea thing. This is awesome, man. This is awesome. Thanks again for letting me try this. Have you guys had a Sahti before? A homebrew you've made yourself or had from someone else you want to tell me about? Made your life about? Guys, anything. What's going on in your world? Let me know. Comment section below. Let's get those conversations going. Once you're done doing that, make sure you check me out on Instagram and Untapped. It's No Hype Beer Reviews at both those places. So please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, imbibe. Cheers, everyone.